Welcome to America Live. Very much pleased to have Mr. Wess Miller joining me. Wess Miller lives in Plano, Texas, a Dallas suburb. He's a tech consulting executive, and one day he walked into a rally protesting state legislature passing laws targeting Chinese people in Texas. Now, Wess considers himself a non-political person, but that day he became an activist, a volunteer. He has been publishing articles, spoken at rallies, and testified in front of the House committee in Columbus, Ohio, where he grew up. We met recently online. So welcome, Wess.
Thank you for having me, James. It's an honor to be here.
And thank you for speaking up and for your passion, vision, and patriotism. So shall we call you an accidental activist coming to the defense of one minority group?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
It's a tough, rough, challenging time for defending civil rights and human rights in this country now. But you're not afraid of sticking out your neck. What keeps you going?
James, my family. As you had mentioned, I'm not a career politician. I'm just a regular American citizen, a neighbor, and a believer in the promise of this country. I live in Texas with my lovely wife, a Chinese immigrant, and our young daughter. And just like you, we're just trying to live the American dream. And my work through this advocacy effort has been driven by a simple but powerful realization that we are living in a moment where the very foundations of our democracy, inclusion, equality, the right to live without fear, are systematically being eroded. I've spent the last couple of years on the ground in Texas, Ohio, and beyond, organizing with communities that are being told that they don't belong. While the vast majority of Americans warmly welcome immigrants, as a nation that was built by them, we know that if you're here, you belong here. And this is just as much your America, James, as it is mine. And my goal is to remind my fellow Americans that our strength has never come from homogeneity. It comes from our ability to pull together a diverse tapestry of people under a shared commitment to justice. If I am welcome here, you are welcome here, and that is the country that I'm fighting for.
So multiple states are passing laws banning Chinese individuals from buying land, houses, from entering public universities as students, scholars, postdocs, especially in STEM fields. And now this has been going on for some time, quite some time, but it has not been front page headlines so often. So many still don't know about this, let alone understanding the real issues. So some simply guesstimate. Please tell people, what is happening? What is this all about? What is between the lines?
James, this wave of legislation is fundamentally about manufacturing a foreign threat to consolidate political power. These bills that you're seeing pop up at state legislatures across the United States are not about national security. The logic simply does not hold up. National security, as you know, is the responsibility of the federal government, and states do not determine foreign policy, intelligence strategy, counter-espionage. State legislatures do not have the tools or the authority to do that work. What these bills do is target people who are here legally, students, doctors, engineers, researchers, entrepreneurs, simply because of where they were born. Crucially, this isn't just organic local outrage. We're seeing a coordinated infrastructure at work. Organizations like State Armor, led by Michael Lucci, who I might add is also married to a Chinese immigrant, have been actively serving as the architects of this movement, providing the research and legislative templates to get passed around to state houses around the country. And they're essentially providing a menu of policy options that turn local communities into theaters for national political warfare. It is a calculated effort to solve a problem that doesn't exist by targeting people who are, in fact, an essential part of our American engine.
President Trump just came back from Beijing, and he declared having had a great state visit to a great country with a great leader he admires most greatly. That's in stark contrast to the waves of anti-Chinese politicking sweeping large chunks of our land in states where he and Republicans won in both 2016 and 2024. So many blame his outrageous xenophobic rhetoric and heavy-handed anti-immigrant excesses as the direct cause or inspiration for much of the current goings-on. And there are others seeing a backlash and undercurrent churning up of deep-seated, lingering, maybe somewhat nostalgic racial sentiment, particularly among MAGA zealots. Which do you see as the big driving force here? And what do they stand to gain and hope to gain?
You know, James, this is to me a professionalized feedback loop. The rhetoric provides the permission structure, and the legislative backlash is the mechanism. So they stand to gain immense political capital by creating a sense of us versus them. Organizations like State Armor effectively translate that broader political rhetoric into hard, actionable legislation. They don't just react to the news cycle, they create the policy tools that allow local politicians to act on those fears. And by packaging these solutions into complex global problems into easily digestible, pre-written state bills, they allow local representatives to adopt a national, provocative brand of politics without ever having to engage with the actual local consequences of those laws. And it's worth noting that the legislation being introduced and passed does not reflect the will of the American people. In fact, James, over the past year and a half, I've not met one person outside the walls of a state legislature who actually supports this legislation. And if this legislation doesn't help America or align with the American voters, what are we doing? It is a strategy that builds power on the backs of marginalized communities, ensuring voters are focused on an enemy rather than the systemic policy failures happening in their own backyards.
Now, let's be clear. The word politics has different connotations. So there's good politics, which is basically the constitutional processes where we exercise our rights to elect public officials, to pass laws and the bills, to conduct the normal business of the country, of the nation, of governance. There's also politics, which is nothing more than power grabbing to satisfy the personal or cliques' hunger for more power.
I think you well said, James. I don't think I could add any more accurate sentiments than what you just shared. I concur. That's exactly what this is about.
So this backlash, a new tidal wave, reminds many of the China Exclusion Act passed by the US Congress in 1883 and extended by the Gary Act of 1892 until fully repealed in 1943, when Americans and the Chinese were fighting fascists shoulder to shoulder, and the US and the Republic of China co-founded the United Nations. We're on the right side of history. We were the good guys. And in 2012, the US House of Representatives adopted a resolution expressing regret for the enactment of such discriminatory laws in our history. That's not a part of our history that we can be proud of. So how is this different? How is it different this time around?
To me, the core difference is that the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act was explicit in that it said the quiet part out loud, that Chinese people were undesirable. Today, the racism is coded. It is sanitized with phrases like foreign adversaries and critical infrastructure, but the impact is identical. Just as the 1882 Act created a permanent underclass and legitimized violence, these modern laws are normalizing discrimination under the guise of legal scrutiny. They rely on the same dehumanizing logic that people of Chinese heritage are fundamentally different, inherently disloyal, and incompatible with American values. And if we don't learn from the past, we are destined to repeat it. And this time, we're doing it under the banner of patriotism.
Dog whistle?
This is a dog whistle.
Quite. Things like this happen to innocent people in this country from time to time, almost invariably in the name of national security and public interest. Same tune, repeated. So how does this compare to what happened to Jewish and other European immigrants to this country a century ago, and what Japanese Americans endured during World War II? Congress also apologized to Japanese Americans almost half a century later after the war ended.
Yeah. Sadly, the parallels are heartbreaking, and they're rooted in a pattern that we've seen before. As you mentioned, history has shown us that the path to state-sanctioned discrimination almost always begins with the targeted stripping of property rights and the denial of the ability to put down roots. Take the alien land laws of the early 20th century, specifically in California. Those laws began with the seemingly reasonable argument of protecting agricultural interests, but they were explicitly designed to prevent Japanese immigrants from owning land or leasing it for long periods. They used the exact same national security and foreign threat rhetoric that we are hearing in state houses today. And that targeted denial of housing and land ownership was the foundational step that eventually normalized the dehumanization, leading to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, a catastrophic failure of justice fueled by racism, not security at all. Similarly, we see how Jewish communities have been historically scapegoated, enduring housing restrictions, restrictive covenants, and the toxic dual loyalty trope used to blame them for societal ills. Now, these modern bills use that exact same playbook. They start by telling us a specific community, they cannot own property, they cannot belong to the soil of this country, and they're inherently suspicious. When you allow a government, James, to target one group based on their ethnicity under the guise of security, you have essentially signed a permission slip to target anyone. And the danger is that this othering never stays confined to the initial group. It spreads and it eventually erodes the civil rights of every single person in this country.
National security has been cited as the reason, leading, sometimes only reason, main reason for these harsh draconian measures. And that reflects some of the concerns not uncommon across the land, hanging over us. From what you just said, you don't consider these all that legit. How is all the stuff entirely blown out of proportion?
Yeah, James, this is if these pieces of legislation popping up across the country were truly about national security, it would be narrow, surgical, and evidence-based. It would focus on specific, verified bad actors rather than sweeping demographic-wide bans. We already have the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., aka CFIUS, and robust federal intelligence apparatuses designed specifically to investigate legitimate foreign investment concerns and protect our nation's sovereignty. These are the tools for real threats. The reality is that state legislatures simply do not have the legal jurisdiction, the intelligence clearance, or the constitutional authority to determine foreign policy or conduct counterespionage. When a state decides it wants to play federal government by passing these laws, they aren't engaging in security. They are engaging in overreach. They are creating a chaotic patchwork of laws that ban a family from buying a home or prevent a world-class researcher from accepting a position at a university, all while doing absolutely nothing to stop an actual foreign adversary. These bills are not security measures. They are a blunt instrument used to punish law-abiding residents. And when you target an entire demographic based on their country of birth, you aren't doing security work. You are doing political theater. It is a cynical performance designed to generate headlines and campaign talking points. And while the real world costs are borne by the families, the students, the professionals who contribute to our economy and our communities every day, we are blowing the risk of ordinary people way out of proportion while ignoring the real proven threats that require actual federal intelligence oversight. By focusing on these performative bills, we create a chilling effect that tells the world that the US is no longer a place for talent, for innovation, for diversity. We're driving away the very people who keep America competitive. And if the concern were actually about national security, we would be having a rigorous, sophisticated conversation about federal visa policy, export controls, and intelligence coordination. Instead, we're seeing state houses rush to pass laws that restrict property ownership by legal, emphasis on legal, immigrants. That does not stop espionage, James. It only serves to stigmatize and isolate our neighbors, making our society less cohesive and ultimately less secure.
To your point, and granted, given the new Cold War mentality on the rise, so these things are not going to just impact people who are visiting here, who are just arrival, but they also impact citizens, green card holders, students, scholars, postdocs, all those people who share Chinese heritage. They speak Mandarin Chinese, and they come from that cultural tradition. Now, given all those, are these sweeping bills and laws really the best way to address whatever can be justified as concerns over national security and public interest? Are they helpful to safeguard our own homeland prosperity and tranquility? What would be better, more pragmatic solutions? And how is this impacting our workforce strength and capability to compete on the global stage as a leading nation and a leading superpower? Some say we're the only superpower, but that's not how we conduct business here. We're behaving stranger. Now, a couple of days ago, the administration just declared all green card applicants need to leave the country, drop everything they have, their property, their life, their jobs, their way of contributing to our society, and go back home and wait for who knows, however long it takes to get back into this country. That's not how we compete. That's, if you drive these people out, there are better places to go. And we have these top talents. They're energetic, they're enthusiastic, they're driven, they're talented. Many other countries would open their doors. What are we doing? Even we consider those concerns are legit, some of that. Is this the best way?
You hit the nail on the head there, James. Everything about these bills are harming America. They're not doing anything to help America. They're not making us more secure. They're not increasing the talent that we attract. In fact, we're seeing just the opposite. Now, you'd ask what can be done better than these sweeping bills and laws. Well, instead of relying on cookie cutter model bills, we need actual, localized, and transparent governance. These bills do not just affect the legal immigrants. They hurt all Americans, you, me, everyone. They hurt the economy as talented people choose to live and invest somewhere else. They hurt the workforce, making it harder to find talent in sectors where we are already struggling and desperately in need of critical talent. They hurt our universities, which depend on global researchers and faculty to stay competitive. They affect real estate markets by forcing residents to sell property, and they impact healthcare, where communities already face critical shortages of doctors and specialists. Most importantly, these bills deepen social division. When laws single out communities based on nationality, they send a signal far beyond what is written on the page. In places where similar laws have been enacted, harassment, hate incidents rose sharply. Policies like this, James, risk fueling suspicion and hostility between neighbors. True national security comes from an inclusive society where everyone is invested in the success of the country. We can do better by focusing on economic policies that actually strengthen our nation, supporting innovation, welcoming global talent, and ensuring that our housing markets are fair, rather than letting non-elected policy shops dictate the laws that govern our neighborhoods.
All this rhetoric based on a panic reaction to things that's happening so fast, so dynamically in the past 2 or 3 decades in particular. In Silicon Valley, some tech firms have 90%, 100% core teams consisting of Chinese nationals, citizens, green card holders, new graduates, H-1B applicants, all those people. If you implement all these things across board in the United States, we lose everything. And the team is going to dissipate, and the businesses are going to fall apart. And it's so hard to find the right talent to do those tasks. It's so hard to assemble and build a cohesive, harmonious working environment. You should let business have a voice in this. And sure enough, even a man like Elon Musk have spoken out against this. This is wrong because this is hurting our competitiveness. This is disrupting our way of conducting a normal business and technology and business innovation. This is all wrong. But America is about getting things done right, with American know-how and can-do. We've been there. We lived through tough times, and we disappointed ourselves, but we survive in this historical American experiment with guts, grit, vision, determination. And politics is no exception. Do you see there's more necessity for public debate, for the opinion makers, leaders to get involved, have an open discussion about how do we go about doing this, taking care of addressing the legitimate concerns, whereas without all these draconian measures and disrupting everything. Because you've been talking to these people, legislators, legal experts, and media people. I just don't see enough time spent on. They're creating an artificial national emergency situation, and but America do things. We're not on a war with China or with some of the nations they included in those laws and bills, but the way we want to do it right. If there's a problem, let's clearly define the problem. Let's come up with smart ideas, American ways addressing them. But do you have a sense that we're not doing enough open discussion? To your point, transparency in our politics, transparency in our legislation processes. Let's have a debate. Let's have a discussion. Let's hear from people. You have heard from people. You have talked to people. You never heard a single person supporting such measures outside the walls of our state legislatures, provided plus the states don't have the tools, don't have the process mechanism to address these. Shall we have a national debate, national discussion? Shall we have a national conversation?
Absolutely. I think we should always have, just taken it a step further, not just with the current state today, but one of the founding principles of America is discussion. We need to come together, and it's never been as important as it is right now. You look at communities, neighbors are divided. There's so much division right now in this country, And we need to come together and talk. Dialogue is the answer. And it's also, sadly, what we're not seeing a lot of right now. In fact, going back to what you had just mentioned that I had said earlier about how I've not in a year and a half of talking to folks in several areas of the country, I've not come across one person, even Trump voters, who think that this legislation makes sense. They can see right through it. They can see, just everyday American can see that, wait a minute, this doesn't solve national security, right? And potentially even more concerning is I rarely come across somebody outside of the legislature walls that even is aware of this legislation and going on in either state. Nothing about this, the process in which it's introduced, the folks who are supporting it, special interest groups, dark money, nothing about what we're seeing today is American. Nothing is about representation. Nothing is about the will of the American people and the American voters. I'll take it a step further. Nothing about what we're talking about, James, is American.
It sounds like it's dog whistle plus some quick political scores rather than solving real problems that are helping with domestic tranquility and American prosperity and taking care of our families and our communities. One example, one analogy would be farmers. Majority of rural populations and predominantly voted for the Republicans and for Trump. But when Trump started rolling out his harsh, brutal anti-immigrant measures, those people rebelled openly. So you're taking away my basic workforce. Now, how am I going to find skillful and willing farmhands? And it's much worse in Silicon Valley now. Now they're, just imagine the HR, the hiring managers, the research and development heads, they're going nuts. How am I going to quickly replace these people? How am I going to find adequately prepared and willing people? Elon Musk has a famous saying, the only people who don't mind, who wants to work overtime, are the Chinese in my company. One group really has 100% of the engineers that came in from China. And the official working language is Mandarin in the workshops. How are going to address those things, those issues? How going to, so to speak, make ends meet? If you take away a big chunk of the workforce, things are going to fall apart. Things are going to come to standing still. Now, let's turn to the people you're trying to help and you're working with. How do you compare the organization and the communication efforts by those people advocating on behalf of the Chinese people in this nation to the civil rights movement of other minority groups? I'm thinking of, you mentioned Jewish people. Around the same time, also Italians, Poles, and maybe Germans too. Irish people, definitely. It's all in history books, textbooks. African Americans, of course. Latinos, now Chinese. How do you compare these efforts to other minority groups, their effort fighting for their civil rights and human rights? Do you see, for instance, active reaching out, clear and confident messaging, and effective coalition building? What advice do you offer to those people, for those people who you've been working with and fighting for? Now you have been on the front line for some time.
I'm glad you asked this question, James. In my humble opinion, this is potentially the most important question for folks who are, as you said, that we're coming across day to day on the front line. My advice is simple. You have to stand your ground. Think of these legislative movements like a bully in a schoolyard. A bully thrives on two things: isolation and silence. They pick on someone, hoping the community will look the other way or be too afraid to intervene. If the target or the bystander does nothing, the bully is emboldened and the behavior escalates. They start targeting more people and the environment becomes toxic for everyone. That's what we're seeing today play out all over. But the moment you stand up, the moment you refuse to be isolated and show that there is a line they cannot cross, the power dynamic shifts. We saw this just last summer in Minneapolis when the community there was confronted by a bully of aggressive federal overreach and intimidation tactics. The residents didn't wait for someone else to step in. They refused to be isolated. They built coalitions, neighborhood by neighborhood, shop by shop, faith group by faith group. And when they saw one family being targeted, they didn't look the other way. They showed up. They showed that they were a united front and that the tactics meant to divide and terrify them were ineffective against a community that held the line because they stood together. They refused to back down, and they made the cost of intimidation too high for the aggressors to maintain. The bully eventually backed off. That, James, is the American spirit. You have to do the same. Speak up at city councils, write to your representatives, and vote as if your future depends on it, because it does. Build coalitions. Do not try to fight this just as an Asian issue or a local issue. This is a civil rights issue. Reach out to your local labor unions, your faith communities, and your neighbors of all backgrounds. When one of us is targeted, the fabric of our community tears for all of us. Don't look down, look them in the eye, and stand your ground.
So well said. I couldn't agree more. Bully is afraid of one thing: people's power. And later rivals need to appreciate this more. That when we say we the people, we mean it. The people own the land. Political power are only as much as powerful as we let them to be. And actually, it's the people. There are all kinds of means and ways to speak out, to fend for ourselves. The example you gave in Minnesota, it's so inspiring. And the people won. Civility won. America won. It's an American victory. It's American triumph over brutality, over excesses, and over bigotry, and over violence, over abused political power. It's so well said. And I really appreciate this. I told you, and I want to thank you profusely because of you are here reminding us how important that is. It takes time. It takes patience, and takes the dogged effort day in, day out. Now, you are in the consulting business. You've been around, seeing a lot of things, and it must have been an eye-opener now that you have been out there making things happen, effecting changes, seeing, feeling, and understanding more than before you stepped in. So what have you learned about the state of these states, our activists, our legal practitioners, lawmakers, our citizens, their emotions and attitudes regarding Chinese Americans and Chinese people in this country?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've learned that the laboratory of democracy, that grand historic concept where states are supposed to pioneer solutions that help the entire nation, has in many places been hijacked and turned into a laboratory of discrimination. We are witnessing a deeply concerning, competitive race to the bottom. State legislatures seem to be in contest to see who can produce the most restrictive, most xenophobic, and the most polarizing legislation. They aren't competing to attract the best talent, build the best schools, or offer the best business environments. They're competing to see who can signal the loudest to the radicalized base by targeting immigrant communities. And it's important to see this, James, for what it is: a coordinated effort to manufacture a crisis that does not exist, using taxpayer time and resources to fuel culture wars rather than addressing real bread and butter issues like infrastructure, education, healthcare, and real national security. However, amidst this darkness, I've also discovered a quiet, powerful, and growing resistance. In every state I've worked in, I've seen people, Black, white, Asian, brown, young, old, labor, and faith-based groups waking up to the reality that this isn't just about one community, it's about the soul of our state governments. Now, we know that voters across the country are showing profound fatigue with policies that exist solely to pit communities against one another. The American public is smarter than the politicians who assume that we'll blindly follow their fear-mongering. In fact, recent polling, special elections, and primaries across the country consistently reflect that frustration. Voters are demanding tangible solutions to their economic and social challenges, not more performative division. They want legislators who are focused on making their lives better, not legislators who are busy writing laws to make their neighbors feel like outsiders. Finally, the state of the states, as you said, is undeniably fractured, but it is not lost yet. We are at a critical juncture, and the path forward depends entirely on whether the people in those states decide that they want to be a place of fear, an exclusionary, closed-off environment that drives away talent and innovation, or a place of freedom, a welcoming, inclusive society that draws the best and brightest to our shores to build a stronger future. I believe that the people are choosing freedom, and it is up to us to make sure that our representatives get the message. Let me add one more point real quickly, James. In meeting with state legislatures in Texas and Ohio and a couple other places, Republican state legislatures, in meeting with them privately, not in front of their peers, not in front of the media, I've had Republican legislators in all of these states that have expressed their concern over these legislation, these pieces of legislation that they're being asked to pass. Think about that for a second. Privately, they're expressing concern. None of them that we ask about, hey, retroactively, let's say that this specific piece of legislation was retroactively applied to situations in the past where, hey, they could have prevented some kind of a national security threat from happening. In fact, name one past problem that this legislation could have prevented. Not one Republican or Democrat, of course, state legislator is able to articulate how this makes us safer or cite any past event or scenario that could have been prevented by this. Just think about that, okay? Yet they're passing these across the country. They're not listening to the voters, right? The voters aren't interested in this malarkey, James. They want representation. That's what this is all about. So I urge legislators that may hear, may read this, think about that. You were elected to listen to the people. So listen to the people.
The people elected you not to be a rubber stamp, a part of a rubber stamp of a one man, a one voice. The people elect you to office to serve the interests of the community, of the families, of the individual citizens of the nation. And that's the real national security. That's the real public interest issues we're faced with. In our state legislature, whether red, blue, or swing states, there are good people who want to do good for their community, for their states, for the people they represent, for their districts. And let's reason. Let's lay bare, if you do this, my shop is going to be shut down. If you do this, my farms are going to be closed. So they try to persuade non-immigrants work on those farms to go work in the in those offices, in those workshops. They can't. They don't last. They're simply not trained and not used to do that. The new blood and fresh blood that we keep pumping into our society is a good thing. That's how we have been fiercely competitive. That's how we become a leader, left and right, in all walks of life, in many fields of science and technology and business and all the innovation, all the politics, the military, arts, literature, everything. People winning Nobel Prizes in our country were not born in the US. So we're looking at things from the wrong perspective. And we need to appeal to the good nature of good side of our legislature, of our decision makers, of our opinion leaders, and tell them the truth. Let's have a candid conversation. So I strongly echo what you just said. You have invested a non-trivial amount of time and energy into something much larger, pretty much outside your normal, regular routine daily life. How has being this involved, being on the front line, changed things for you personally?
That's a great question. Well, I can say that I haven't got as much sleep in the past couple of years, and I've lost some hair. But no, it transformed me, James, from a spectator into a steward. I used to be the kind of person who would read the news, get frustrated, move on, perhaps shake my head at the screen before going about my day. I bought into the lie that politics was something that happened to me, a distant, professionalized force, rather than something that I could fundamentally help shape. I allowed myself to believe that the system was too big, too rigid, and too entrenched to be influenced by a single voice. But through this work, I've realized that democracy is a muscle. And like any muscle, if we don't use it, it will atrophy. And the people who push these divisive exclusionary laws are counting on that atrophy. They are banking on our cynicism, on our fatigue. They want us to stay on the sidelines, frustrated, disengaged, disenfranchised, because that silence makes their work much easier.
Indifferent and cynical, waiting to be divided and conquered.
Yes, exactly. And when I finally decided to step into the arena, I realized that the atrophy was never inevitable. It was a choice I had been making by not showing up. So I've learned a hard but liberating truth about the machinery of power in the United States, that those rooms where decisions are made aren't closed off because they are meant to be invincible. They are closed off because we haven't knocked loud enough, James, or often enough. So once you stand outside those doors with a coalition of people behind you, people from every background, united by a shared vision of justice, you realize that those doors are not nearly as heavy as they seem. Mm-hmm. It has been exhausting, yes. Mm-hmm. There are days when the weight of this fight feels immense, especially when you're standing up to a well-funded legislative bullying that treats human lives like political chess pieces. But it has also been the most deeply rewarding experience of my life. Standing up to that machinery has stripped away my fear. I no longer see it as an all-powerful force, but as something that's flawed, fragile, and desperate to maintain control through fear. And most importantly, James, we haven't done this alone. I found a community of people who, like me, refuse to let hate have the last word. And we are a cross-section of this country, Black, white, Asian, brown, old, young. And we have realized that our strength is in our refusal to be divided. And I'm no longer just asking to belong in the political process. I am, along with you and several others, we are building a new table where all of us belong. That is the transformation. I stopped waiting for a seat at the table and realized that as citizens, as people of this great nation, we are the ones who get to decide who is invited to that table, James.
Well said. Good for you. Wess, keep on walking, keep on talking. Might you likely run for office someday?
I don't think so. At this point, I like what I do, and I just want to beat these horrible bills across the country and then go back to daily life. But I won't rule anything out, James, because 2 years ago I would never have imagined us being here today. So who knows what the future holds? But what I know is imminent, is right now, is critical, is we need to continue the dialogues, and we need to invite everyone. People who don't look like me or you, we need to bring everyone to that table. Let's talk. That's what we do well. We talk. We can develop solutions, but not without talking. And we need everyone, James. Everyone on the sidelines, let's all come together. Let's talk. Let's build a better America than we've ever seen.
It's not a tribal issue. It's not a community issue. It's an American issue. And the only way to resolve this is that we all unite, we work together, we talk to each other, we understand, we explain. So well said. So,
Thank you.
And thanks much again, Wes, for everything.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been fun, and we'll talk more.
It's been a pleasure joining you today. I've truly enjoyed our conversation. Keep doing what you do, and let's keep the conversations going.
Great. So see you next time. And thank you out there for watching and listening. Please share and subscribe if you like it. For more on American life, see you next time.